Yes. Uh, Very good evening, my dear friends and my fellow colleagues. Uh, this is Dr. Sipuri Krishnamohan, consultant endocrinologist and diabetologist, Sipuri Diabetes Center, Karnool. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you on this evening in this part of a webinar speaker program. So today we are going to talk about something about the combination of the fixed drug combination of the SGLT2 inhibitors and the DPP4 inhibitors. It's a case-based outlook to optimize the SGLT2 inhibitors and the DPP4 inhibitors, the fixed dose combination in type 2 diabetes mellitus management. And you all are well aware that the type 2 diabetes mellitus is always a progressive disorder, and the onset of macrovascular complications occur very early in the metabolic dysregulation, followed by the microvascular complications. So the first macrovascular complications set in so early, unless otherwise we meticulously control the glycemic levels and maintain a reasonable glycosylated hemoglobin, the HbA1c, somewhere around or less than 7, and ideally in between 6.5 to 7 if we can maintain the glycated hemoglobin of the patient. Otherwise we will not be able to control the macrovascular complications which occur in the early phase of the disease, and the microvascular complications per se, which are totally the glycemic dependent complications. So now you can see this wonderful slide. Though this is a old slide, still I consider this is a golden slide. So the background pathology of type 2 diabetes mellitus is either the most of the times it is insulin resistance, and followed by hyperinsulinemia, which leads to the insulinopenia. Now you can see this the insulin resistance, which is the main culprit of type 2 diabetes mellitus, and this the genetics, they play a vital role, and the weight gain, they play a vital role, followed by dyslipidemia, followed by hypertension. There are several factors to mention, but the slide doesn't permit us to include all those things. And then it is followed by a condition called pre-diabetes, and then that is progressive on to the type 2 diabetes, that is overt type 2 diabetes. And the first to occur is the impaired glucose tolerance and the impaired fasting glucose, that is the IFG is the blood glucose of 100 milligram per deciliter to 125 milligram of milligram per deciliter is defined as impaired fasting glucose, and the definition of ICT is on a 75 gram of glucose, if the 2-hour OGTT is in between 140 milligram per deciliter and 199 milligram per deciliter, then only we can label it as IGT. Never you can diagnose IGT on a normal post breakfast or post lunch without a 75 gram OGTT. So this leads to early diabetes, and later on leads to late diabetes, and this is the time exactly with the onset of disease, and this leads to hyperglycemia because of the two mechanisms: the loss of first phase of insulin response, followed by the loss or the blunted or the absence of the second phase of insulin response, which leads to the hyperglycemia, and it's the macrovascular complications, especially they start in the course of the overt diabetes itself, prior to overt diabetes, that is in the stage of the pre-diabetes, that is the phase of IFG, that is impaired fasting glucose, or IGT, the impaired glucose tolerance, put together the pre-diabetes. That is the reason why we need to pick the patients up so early in the phase of prediabetes, so that the macrovascular complications, especially the coronary artery disease, that is the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, is the new name given by this the American Diabetes Association to describe all the complications of the macrovascular complications that may be the acute coronary syndromes or the chronic coronary syndromes and the heart failure and the stroke, everything put together is called the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. And the macrovascular complications, that is the complications especially related to the myocardial infarction or the coronary artery disease or the heart failure, they are seen with the equal proportion even in prediabetes when compared to diabetes. So it's very important for us to pick the patients so early so that we can prevent them from getting on to over diabetes, and we can prevent the complications too. And there is a phase like hyperinsulinemia we have discussed, and the macrovascular complications followed by the microvascular complications as the age advances. So we need to, the take home message is, we need a stringent the intensified treatment which leaves us the HbA1c in between 6.5 to 7%. And despite multiple therapies, majority of the type 2 diabetes mellitus patients have got uncontrolled HbA1c levels, and you can see very clearly in this slide at the time of diagnosis, as it is seen in Eukipedias, that is the gold standard study, that is United Kingdom prospective diabetes study. You can see here the beta cell function that is defined by the HOMA, and the time from the diagnosis in years, like the diagnosis of diabetes occurs somewhere in the middle, and prior to the somewhere around 5 to 10 years prior to that, the process of diabetes starts from normal glucose tolerance to impaired glucose tolerance to impaired fasting glucose, which is called prediabetes. And the day doctor says that you have type 2 diabetes, then you need to add at least 5 to 10 years to the duration of diabetes. And from then onwards, the dotted line which we are seeing is the extrapolation of the beta cell function prior to the diagnosis. And we find that the up to 50% of the beta cell function has already been lost at the time of diagnosis. See, this is an old theory, and the new theory from the last, I think it's around way back in 2007, if I remember correctly, Ralph A. DiFranco, considered to be the father of modern diabetology, has postulated a hypothesis in 2007 ADA, that is, I think I was physically there in San Francisco, where he said that by the time you diagnose a patient of type 2 diabetes mellitus, and 50 to 80% of the beta cells are dead already, and majority of the patients already have complications. That's what we see in day-to-day practice. The patient already by the time we diagnose, he will be diagnosed with 1 or 2 complications. Like, okay, when we send the patient for the screening of retinopathy, it comes as non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, or the patient may complain of this particular painful sensory neuropathy, and the ECG may show the signs of either coronary artery disease or ischemic heart disease. And so we see a lot of complications at the time of diagnosis. So we need to pick the patients not at the stage of over diabetes, at the stage of the pre-diabetes. Even prior to that also, the patient needs, all Indians are at risk of developing diabetes per se. So everybody after crossing the age of 35, they need to go for a meticulous annual examination. And on the right hand side, you can see the current management. This is this study is called the Discover Study Program. wherein the total number of subjects taken were 11,899 across the globe, and out of that the Southeast Asia, the cohort was, the number taken was 2052. Out of that India contributed like 1925 patients and Indonesia 126, and you can see very clearly here the green is the first one is less than 7 of glycated hemoglobin, and the light yellow is less than 7 to 7.9%, and the red is less than 8 to 8.9%, and the brick red is more than 9%. See, we can see all the individuals, and only some were to the target of less than 7. Almost all are out of the target levels, and globally it's estimated that 26.7% of the patients had a hemoglobin A1C of more than 9%. See, this is very pathetic actually. This is happening even in the developed countries, and also the developing countries like India, and the developed countries like the US or the Canada or the UK or the European Union, and we find the same scenario. And the highest proportions are seen in the Southeast Asia, that is basically our South Asian continent, subcontinent, that is India, and partly the Indonesia, which is around 35.6%. Only 17.4% attain target HbA1c of less than 7. That is very pathetic. See, that is 13.4% in Southeast Asian population. They achieved a target HbA1c of less than 7%. The slides are not moving, ma. And this has prompted an evaluation in the management of type 2 diabetes mellitus. As clinicians, the evolving practice that is like individualized HbA1c goals must be set, and it is all customized. Nothing is generalized. See, depending upon the age, depending upon the associated comorbidities, depending upon the complications of the diabetes, we need to come to a reasonable HbA1c, and we should fix the target for that particular patient. Like the young individual without any comorbidities, without any complications, we can set a goal of 6.5 and to 7. And the elderly patient, we can set a goal of 7.5. Even the elderly, very elderly, we can set a goal of even 8 point also. Keeping multiple factors in consideration, taking into consideration as clinicians, we need to set the goals. And the new evolving global guidelines are coming up, and we are getting lot of evidence from the evidence-based medicine, and they treat to target versus stepwise approach. This is very, very important. Olden days we used to say the stepwise approach, that is start with metformin 500 mg, after 15 days you increase it to metformin 1000 mg, after a month you increase it to 1500 mg, and after 2 months you increase to the maximal dose, the Indian maximal dose of metformin, the 2 grams. So if we take that stepwise approach, by the time the patient attains a reasonable glycemic control, everything is gone, and he would have landed in some one or other the macrovascular complications. So now the funda is treat to target, not the stepwise approach. And now the hit early and hit hard, strike early, strike hard is the funda we need to adopt as clinicians treating diabetes. And the multiple agents for initial management, this is very much important for all the clinicians. The take-home message is the HbA1c must be individualized. The goals are very much customized depending upon the patient's condition and the comorbidities, and keeping the age and the susceptibility to get into hypoglycemia. These are all the factors to be considered before setting an A1C goal. And like new evolving global guidelines, and hit early, hit hard, that is treat to target, no stepwise approach. and initiate the treatment with multiple agents so that the good glycemic control is achieved and in a very short span to the desirable of the glycosylated hemoglobin, that is less than 7%. And this is called, a term called there is glycemic legacy and dysglycemic legacy. So glycemic legacy is just opposite to this dysglycemic legacy. And what if the HbA1c is not controlled early? This is a $1 million question. So poor A1C control in the first year of diagnosis is associated with the increased risk of the cardiovascular complications in the long term. See, that is the reason why we should meticulously control the HbA1c as early as possible. And this is called the dysglycemic legacy. And we can clearly see this is the patients with HbA1c around or more than 7%. And the dark blue is the dotted dark blue is with uncontrolled diabetes, that is the A1C of more than 7%, not receiving intensive therapy. IT is nothing but intensive therapy within 1 year. And the light blue dotted is the patients with the HbA1c that is of less than 7% who received intensive therapy before 1 year of diagnosis. Now we can very clearly see the dysglycemic legacy is leading to the complications. It's a drive risk for the complications. And the patients who are not controlled, they at the mean age of 5.3 years, there is a significantly increased risk of the risk of myocardial infarction by 67%. The confidence interval, that is CI, is nothing but confidence interval, that is 39 to 101%. And the stroke is increased by 51%, and the confidence interval is 25 to 83%. And the heart failure is increased by 64%. The CI is the 40 to 91, and the composite cardiovascular events is around 62%. And so this is the graph you can see where the tight control, they are at very less risk of getting into complications, and then the ones those who are not meticulously controlled are at the risk of getting into multiple complications. And let us look at Mr. Vijay, a patient of type 2 diabetes mellitus, uncontrolled on metformin. This is a case scenario. See, Mr. Vijay is a corporate executive and is a non-smoker. He is around 43 years old, and he has diabetes for more than 2 years, hypertension for more than 6 years, and the current medication is on metformin 1 gram BD. That's what I said. He is on the maximal dose of metformin for an Indian scenario. It is good that he has not exceeded the 2 grams or the 2000 milligram. So 1 gram in the morning and the 1 gram in the night. And the treatment for hypertension, he is on amlodipine 5 milligram along with telmisartan 40 milligram once daily. And his glycosylated hemoglobin, it is somewhere around 8.6%. And he is obese. The classification for Indians is totally different, and the international classification of obesity is totally different. And to brief you, the BMI of less than 18.5%, like 18.5 kilograms per meter square, is considered as non-obese, underweight. And as far as this is considered, underweight is considered, this is same for the Indian scenario as well as the international scenario. From there it changes from 18.5 to 23, that is 23 is non-obese for an Indian, and it is for, until 25 it is non-obese for the other scenario, the rest of the globe, and from 23 to 27.5 it is considered as obesity in the Indian scenario, whereas at until 30 it is considered overweight in the other scenario, and above 30 to 34.9 is grade 1 obese, 35 to 39.9 is grade 2 obese, and anything BMI of more than 40 per kilogram kilogram per meter square is morbidly obese or grade 3 obese. For us, above a BMI of 27.5 kilogram per meter square is considered obese. So in that category, Mr. Vijay, our current patient, he falls under the category of obesity. And what should be the target A1C for Mr. Vijay? So ideally it should be less than 7%. Definitely, it's somewhere around. We need to put the patient as he is 43 years old. He's got diabetes and associated the hypertension. We don't know the dyslipidemia status. So he is already obese. So his A1C is out of control. The target must be like, so he is a non-smoker. So, but just by seeing this corporate executive, we can say that he is stressed out all the time. So let us keep the target A1C as 6.5 to below 7%. And what should be the primary, the same continuation of this slide, the primary considerations, more stringent goal, less than 7% is very much required. That's what I told you. And where there is more than 1.5 of HbA1c reduction to achieve the optimum glycemic control. So his A1C is somewhere around 8.6. So he needs it's more than 1.5% above the target. So he needs a tight control. So what should be the approach for Mr. Vijay? Mr. Vijay, the same thing. The 43-year-old diabetes, hypertension, metformin 1 gram BD, the glycosylated hemoglobin 8.6, obese. And what should be the approach after metformin? Is it the addition of single drug, that is either the sulfonylurea in our scenario, or the DPP4 inhibitors, or the SGLT2 inhibitors, or the addition of the fixed dose, fixed drug combination of the SGLT2 inhibitor and DPP4 inhibitor. So I consider this strategy of adding FDC of the SGLT2 inhibitor and DPP4 inhibitor is going to suit Mr. Vijay's profile. So let us see what happens. And maintaining glycemic targets with a single agent can be difficult to achieve, and you can very clearly see this. The glycemic control tends to decline over time with monotherapy. As I have already said, diabetes, type 2 diabetes mellitus is always a progressive disorder, and the annual death rate of the beta cell, functioning beta cell, will be 4% per annum. So as the age progresses, as the duration of the diabetes progresses, they just get into the lesser and lesser functioning beta cell reserve. Then one particular point of time, they just get into a term called pancreatic bankruptcy, where there is no functioning beta cell and the patient has to be on insulin and for a lifetime. So the glycemic control tends to decline over time because of the decline in the beta cell therapy. So monotherapy should be deferred, and he should be put on like the multiple therapies. So that's what the clearly the left side it shows the Eucripides. Panur. ఎక్కడ రాముడు ఎక్కడ ఉన్నావు నాన్న